Today, I'm going to be going through some of the biggest stories in the news. To help me go through this, I have special guest Paul Stone with me. Paul, thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, my honor. It's great to be back. Thank you, Stephen, for having me.
So just some background. Paul Stone is the founder of Colonial Metals Group. He understands economics, running a business. But I've got some stories that I really believe the American people need to know about. The first one I want to jump in on is, I don't know if you saw this or not, but former Wall Street journalist, investigative journalist, Asra Nomani just broke a huge story about Springfield, Ohio. This is the town where JD Vance said illegal immigrants are eating people's pets. CNN, ABC, MSNBC, CBS, they're all trying to say it's a lie. But he's saying, listen, don't focus on that. The real tragedy is that this small American town is being overrun by illegals because of Kamala Harris and Joe Biden. Well, now journalist Asra Nomani says this town is actually a hub for an extremely complex human trafficking organization. She says the NGOs, non-government organizations funded by the Harris-Biden administration, are moving cheap labor in and out of small towns in America to take jobs and also make big corporations like big agra happy. How bad is this for the American worker to keep cheapening their labor and watering down real income for people?
Oh, it's horrific. To me, it's evil. It's evil. You know, I remember working at a company a long time ago, it's probably in my 20s, and they changed their compensation policy without really telling anyone. And it just showed up that you had a much lighter paycheck, and it was enraging. It's just evil. It's just wrong. Now, there's people suffering all over the place. And my viewpoint has always been and will always be, until the government track record proves better and they deserve a real shot at things again, is that solutions are best going to come out of a democratic people, because we're free to think and create. And we're not struggling with the distractions and the oppressive actions and policies coming out of Washington. So the American worker, the American family, moms and dads and brothers and sisters and kids have been suffering mightily for the last few decades, caused by something the government could have foreseen happening to our population long before it happened, and they've done nothing about it. And now you've given rise, because they have access to unlimited amounts of money. Just think, how many NGOs could there be if there was no extra money floating around in the system? There really wouldn't be any. No one would even give a damn to hear their crazy opinions. But now the world can run amok because there's access to just hundreds of billions and trillions of dollars at will. They literally believe now to finance all this crap is called modern monetary theory. There's a great Wikipedia page on it, MMT. And it's the belief that money is just a commodity and the government can create as much of that commodity as it wants, which is hooey, because eventually the commodity is worthless. So I'm angered like hell when I hear these stories, and I think of the people that are already here, that their own government caused them to suffer, to try and help end the suffering of people that were suffering elsewhere coming here to no longer suffer. There's a better way. We can still and always could have been an America of mixed race and cultures that got along well, because we're very hospitable. We're immigrants too. But when you have a government that polarizes us against each other and constantly runs a mindset that you need to be against this and against that and against this and against that, no one's really for anything.
Yeah. Well, I just saw the Reagan movie, which was fantastic. And it showed the line in the debate where Ronald Reagan beats Jimmy Carter. And it's not necessarily where he says, is your life better off than it was 4 years ago? If it's not, then I suggest you make a different decision. But he basically said to Jimmy Carter, listen, American families aren't struggling because they're living too well. Inflation and the economy are struggling because the government is living too well. And think about all of the problems that Americans are having. Most of it is not their fault. It's actually the government just spending like crazy. I want to watch a clip with President Trump, and then we will react to it together. Let me play that really quick.
4,000 person town of Charleroi, Pennsylvania. Have you heard of it? Charleroi. What a beautiful name. But it's not so beautiful now. Has experienced a 2,000% increase in the population of Haitian migrants under Kamala Harris. So Pennsylvania, remember this when you have to go to vote. Okay, just remember this. 2,000% increase. This is a small town. All of a sudden, they got thousands of people. The schools are scrambling to hire translators for the influx of students who don't speak not a word of English, costing local taxpayers hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Okay. When I saw that, I had to Google just to make sure that he was correct. I mean, you sell gold and silver, right? I used to be in finance. You would love for something to go up 2,000%, right? But to have a population boom by 2,000%, and now who's paying for all of these illegals in the area? It's the taxpayer in that area, but they're not getting the same help. And so, like Trump says, now the schools are overwhelmed. They're having to hire all these translators. The kids are being ignored because all of the attention is being sucked up. The jobs are going to them. The food stamps. There's people in Springfield, Ohio, saying, "I work at the grocery store." They're buying thousands of dollars a month with food stamps. Meanwhile, we're not getting any kind of assistance. I mean, can you imagine where you live exploding by 2,000% in new people that don't speak English, that don't have the same background? What are your thoughts on President Trump's comments?
Well, he's absolutely right to illuminate that government choice making continues to injure the people that are already here. And you know, if you were coming to this country and you got into town and people knocked on your door and said, "Welcome," right? "Welcome to our town. Here's a pie," right? "Why don't you come to the Little League game tomorrow night and you'll meet a bunch of us there. I see you've got some kids. Maybe they'd like to learn how to play baseball, or maybe they already do." That's what we can give them. That's what the American people can give them on our own. But it's got to happen in a better way than just dumping people from outside of this country into the lap of some small town, because the people that are invading that small town, if you will, also feel bad about being there. I'm sure they're glad to no longer be where there's, genocide occurring or they're kidnapping daughters. But they don't get the luxury of experiencing America that could love them and be kind to them and help them integrate into the fabric of that town, because America is a gracious place. We are gracious people. I absolutely believe that. It's when the government attacks us already here, dilutes the value of our savings, causes the cost of living to exceed wage growth. Maybe we could talk about that metric later. That to me is evil. And you could say, well, isn't it? It's just evil. It's evil to arbitrarily take away greatness. Like Reagan said, we aren't in pain because we're living so well. We're in pain because the government is. And all of that was caused by Nixon's deletion of the gold standard, because gold just limited the government from creating money for itself. It had to live off taxes. It was required, was forced to. Once that relationship ended, the government can live off printed money. So in a way, it's illegal what they're doing, because they're living outside of the constraints of what they should be strapped down by.
Yeah. Well, that's why our national debt is around $35 trillion, a number that most of us can't conceive of, let alone ever pay back.
And the destruction of this system leads you to eventually say, okay, this is all sickening stuff. What can the individual retiree do, or someone nearing retirement do, or anyone with saved money do to ensure their financial autonomy protects their individual autonomy? That money can't be destroyed, historically speaking, if it's in precious metals. It's the whole reason I do what I do. People don't need to care much about me. Just care about the message. I don't care if we sell 100 ounces of gold a day or 100 ounces of gold a second. I'm here to help people understand there is a solution to this problem, and mathematically measured and politically, you're experiencing the zenith of insanity or lunacy, as Greenspan called it in 1967, living in a financial world not limited by gold. I don't really care about what people think would be so inflexible still on the gold standard. Yeah, and life's always going to be a bit inflexible here on planet Earth. We can't live in a world without financial gravity. Would you rather have a little inconvenience or your financial world explode in front of you and you all end up broke, or a government that moves completely into communism? I'd rather have everything be limited and right-sized and have to still have a bit more manual labor to my lifestyle.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to go deeper into that. When I first started getting into gold and silver, gold was around $1,600 an ounce. Now it's around $2,500 an ounce. That is a massive increase percentage-wise and number-wise. But at the same time, the US dollar has lost almost 30% of its buying power. And then the government wonders why people are struggling. Speaking of that, the Federal Reserve, which isn't really federal or connected to the government, they just use that name to trick people, under Jerome Powell's leadership, has just announced that they will cut interest rates by 50 basis points or 0.5%. Do you see this as them being confident that inflation is over, or do you see this as them being desperate, cheapening the interest rate in order to keep the illusion that the U.S. economy is strong under Kamala Harris and Joe Biden?
All right. So this is key for everyone to just finally get into their DNA. When 2008 happened, the Federal Reserve had to take rates to zero. It cost 0.25 point to borrow our American dollar for 8 years. Now, when you think about how you have to make our money free to borrow, please understand that should be telling you we are done. It's over. The run ended, to me, mathematically speaking, in 2008. The self-propelling, self-winding economy ended in 2008. And the financial world needed, from a great economics report by the Levy School of Economics, been around since the 1800s, showed that the Fed had to give out $29 trillion out of thin air to prop up. Even the Central Bank of Europe needed $8 trillion in liquidity from the Federal Reserve and all kinds of other institutions, banks outside this country and in this country. And I'm not trying to say or predict any kind of failures. I'm simply saying that from what we can get our arms around and what we can read, to me, zero interest rates for 8 years is your system is done. Because what you want to think about, folks, is when they cut rates, they're jumping on the gas pedal. They're speeding things up. They're getting the tires turning at, trying to get things going 100 miles an hour again. But why would we need to do that if the economy is so strong? If it's so strong, we don't need to goose the system. So to be cutting rates now, you're thinking, well, there must be a problem because things, as the things die and break, the government is bailing that out. So as you're dying, you're getting put on life support, so you still look like you're functioning. The cost just on our debt, which isn't debt because it'll never be repaid, $35 trillion is $1 trillion a year at current interest rate. If you cut rates, then you spend less on the interest payments that the government needs to make on that $35 trillion, and mortgages and corporate debt cost them less. What it starts is new action as well. There's people sitting on the sidelines going, I'll do that big real estate project when interest rates go down, because then borrowing the money is cheaper than borrowing $500 million to build this sensational real estate project. It's 5 or 6 or 7% rates. So they save hundreds of millions of dollars over time if rates are lower. That's going to cause more economic activity, which then causes, because it's all artificial, more inflation, which then, and they're not telling you exactly what the inflation number is. Go to shadowstats.com and look at the old fashioned way. It shows inflation's around 12%, not 2.5%, not 3%. That's all hooey because it's not including agriculture and energy. So that's no longer an indication to us how far our money goes during the day. It's an indication to the Fed on how the economy might be overheating. And they see rates around 2% as their target, but that has nothing to do with what food costs are, because they don't count it in the equation. So cutting rates says to me we've got more problems. It confirms for me the problems are already there. And they're trying to evade utter and complete failure on some human being's watch. We're all interested in our legacies and our usefulness to others and what people say about us when we're pushing up daisies. Same with any head of something, head of Exxon, head of the Fed, head of Walmart. We're all going to say, oh, I hope they'll say I did a good job when I'm no longer doing that job. Jerome Powell, just like any other Fed chair, wants to have a legacy that he was a great guy while he was there and made great groovy decisions. The problem was started in 1913 when the Fed was created. It's like asking a committee to manage our weather. You want to talk about climate change? Look at how overheating the economy has gotten. Everything is melting around you.
Yeah, no, it is. I think, my viewers, they feel it. The American people feel it. That's why I believe the economy is going to drive people's votes more than ever. Like they may say, oh, Kamala Harris, maybe she's less caustic when tweeting than Donald Trump, but I don't believe they think she's good with money. I don't believe they think she's good with foreign policy. And I don't believe anybody believes that she's going to be able to go up against Vladimir Putin or Xi Jinping or Kim Jong-un or the Ayatollah of Iran. She has no experience. These people are going to steamroll her, which is terrifying. Let me react with you, Paul, to one more video. This is kind of scary. This is JD Vance, the vice presidential candidate under Trump. He is openly admitting no one in Washington, D.C. knows how much we are spending on 15 million illegal immigrants, and it's going to destroy the dollar. Let's watch this together.
Reasons why I'm instinctively skeptical. And look, I want Social Security and Medicare to be financially sustainable for the long term. They're very important programs for our elderly Americans. But when people say the reason why we can't have reasonable spending policies is because of Social Security and Medicare, I'm like, whoa. That's a distraction. You're distracting from the reason that we actually have an out of control budgetary picture. That's why I just gave you the $6.5 versus $4.5 trillion number. What are we really spending money on that is unsustainable? It's wars, right? It's foreign conflicts. And you're right. It's hundreds of billions of dollars per year that we're spending on illegal aliens. Now, here's a crazy thing. I've been in the Senate for not even 2 years. When I ask people how much money, talk about healthcare for illegals, talk about Social Security fraud, talk about Medicare fraud, talk about housing vouchers, because even though illegal aliens aren't entitled to Section 8, there's fraud in the program, and also their children are entitled to Section 8. So, of course, that money flows to the illegal aliens. Add all this up and then take probably 25, 30 million people who are here legally, and maybe that undercounts it. How much are we actually spending per year on illegal aliens in this country? No one in our government knows, okay? I've heard estimates that it's $100 billion a year. I've heard estimates that it's $600 billion a year. I've heard estimates that it's even higher. There are ways to estimate it, but we don't actually have good ways to track this stuff, because a lot of the money, Tucker, think about this. A lot of the money is spent at the local level, right? So if you're an illegal alien, you commit a crime and you're in a local jail cell, like we're not really counting that money from or into the cost of having illegal aliens. But of course, if you're a municipality and you're spending $40,000 a year to house some criminal who should go back to where he came from, that's real money, right? Or let's take this example. Where do most illegal aliens get their health care?
Emergency rooms.
Emergency rooms, exactly right. So what is the...
Why you can't go to an emergency room now when your kid gets sick.
The wait time in emergency rooms has nearly doubled over the last few years because we have all these illegal aliens who are getting hospital services at emergency rooms. Well, obviously, they're not paying the bill when they get it. Who pays the bill? The American taxpayer. You add up all these costs, and I think it's hundreds of billions of dollars that we're spending on illegal aliens. And this is why I think it's ridiculous for people to say, well, we can't get America's fiscal picture under control unless we cut Social Security from American citizens who have paid into it for 45 years. My response is, why don't we start with the wars, and why don't we start with not giving illegal aliens a ton of benefits and then see where our fiscal situation is after that?
Wow. Like that is mind blowing what JD Vance just shared with Tucker Carlson. Like, right. Democrats try to say that Republicans want to get rid of Social Security and Medicare. It's all cheap words that try to scare people. But why wouldn't we start with these endless wars? Why wouldn't we start with cutting $500 billion out with the cost of all of these illegal immigrants? Your thoughts on his comments, Paul?
Yeah, two things. One, before I give my little explanation or take on the numbers, I just was thinking of if people in the audience have seen the movie Tommy Boy. So Chris Farley's riding around and he says in a meeting, you could stick your head up a cow's rear to check out the steaks, but wouldn't you rather just take the butcher's word for it? Well, I've stuck my head up the rear of this backwards financial world. And what I see is these numbers. When Social Security was, they're really just for measuring things, because Social Security is unfunded without printed money. There is no Social Security. They're printing the checks. When Social Security, which is a great idea, was put together in the 40s, there were 44 workers for every retiree. Today, there's 3. It is impossible, mathematically impossible to pull the weight of that cost by the economy we have today. That actually is the reason we are struggling and failing financially. It is the Grand Canyon size toll. It is the lack of vision from the government to see, hey, we got 60 million new workers in the economy in the 60s and the 70s. They're going to leave someday. What are we going to do to offset that? Why don't we set up kiosks south of the Rio Grande in any city with 50,000 people in it and interview those that want to come north? And we'll check out the great ones. We'll send the plumbers and the nurses and the doctors and the accountants and the dentists up north. And we'll even look around the American landscape and go, here's probably where you'd best be suited. And we send them up there and we integrate them into America. We teach them English. They get a driver's license. They know what street signs are like. They know what our little idiosyncrasies are like here in America. And we integrate and keep the immigration wheel turning in a great way that doesn't hurt anyone who's already here. And those folks could be welcomed here, because you have to mathematically offset 60 million people leaving your workforce. In 1997, that began. So when you say things like, a couple $100 billion here, the government is on track to spend around $8 trillion this year. That $100 billion is nothing, but what it's a sign of, that's to scare the hell out of people, is it proves once again the government has no vision. That's the problem. Einstein said, lock this into your brain. The mind that created the problem cannot possess the solution. So if the government thinks it's a great idea to send Haitians into a small town and cause the population to rise by 2,000%, you can wonder why the hell would they do that? But understand the solution will never come from Washington. It can come from outsiders, like Reagan was an outsider, right? Trump's an outsider. Vance is pretty much an outsider. Solutions can come from those minds, business minds, people like you and me on Main Street. But can you change a government that is so massive, stop any of this from happening when payroll for the government currently, it has grown to a size, annual payroll for the government is $1.4 trillion a year. When Reagan was president, it was $75 billion. Your government has grown by 1,600%, kind of like 2,000% increase in this small town we're talking about. So how could anything so vast that creates the problems ever be changed or ever produce the solutions? People need to truly wake up and go, wow, I really need to take matters into my own hands. Now, I can't start stockpiling MREs in the garage for 40 years worth of food, but I can at least protect where my savings is and stop banking with the dollar and bank with precious metals. And maybe not forever, but oh my God, if it is forever, thank God you've made this choice today before this election, because it might not go the way you want. There may not even be a shot of it going the way you want. I know there'll be a lot of voting. I'm not confident there'll actually be an election, but I know there'll be a lot of voting. So folks who are no longer in that career have to understand you're walking around with a financial tank of oxygen on your back and you're sipping off of it. And that allows you to take cruises and barbecues and visit the grandkids and not have to go to work tomorrow. If that tank of oxygen disappears or the air inside of it is no longer air because the dollar is completely eviscerated or communism just takes it away from you next year, you're done. You are now slave to the government, which seems to be the trajectory they're headed in. And I don't believe it's from some grand plan. I believe it's just a stumbling ineptitude that leads to this utter failure that we can see examples of in all the reserve currency countries before us. We made America great. The government, as it grows in size, ruins it. Eventually, the whole thing is ruined. Where do you want your money located when all that ruining goes off? And you look through history, you tell me where there was a winning government that presided over a reserve currency status that didn't lose it. You can look at England, France, the Dutch, the Spanish, the Portuguese, and the Romans invented it. What is the story that tells us? Governments ruin countries. They ruin the greatness the people created. We're suffering from the same thing here. Dollar's worth 100 cents. It's now worth 3. You're almost out of gas. The decision is now. This election may not actually be one. You'll be doing a lot of voting, but you may not get the candidate you want. It may not even be possible for it to happen. What are you going to do then on November 8th or the 10th or the 15th when everything's confirmed? Look at making some plans now. Relocate some portion of your savings, just if that's a good idea. I'm not ordering anyone to do that, because you are up against something you can't beat. That's my opinion.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, as the government has gotten bigger, so have the problems.
Yes, and they create them.
Yeah,
so why would we ever think they could solve them?
Yeah.
Einstein said they are devoid of the vision before they make the choice, because the choice constantly leads to problems. They don't see it as a problem they're creating. That's what's nuts about it. We're sitting here going, but they look smart. They sound good. They've been doing this for a long time. Why do they always get it wrong? Because they don't have the vision to get it right.
Yeah. Well, you think about, okay, government's gotten bigger and the value of the dollar has gone down. Like, there, you have to say there's a causation or at least a correlation, right? And so that's one reason that I like gold and silver, is it's outside of that government, right? Like, gold and silver have value in Russia. They have value in Africa. They have value in Canada. They have value in Springfield, Ohio, or wherever people are watching this from. Okay. I saw perhaps one of the scariest things I've seen this entire election cycle last night. Hillary Clinton announced on MSNBC that she has been invited to be one of Kamala Harris's top advisors.
Of course.
Like, what? Hillary Clinton, that ruined the country, that invented and paid for this hoax dossier, which almost ruined the country. I mean, that made MAGA, conservative, family-focused people the enemy of the country. And now she's the top advisor. Like, what's your reaction to hearing Hillary Clinton is now directly one of the biggest names whispering in Kamala Harris's ear?
They're going for it. Of course. And Obama, he'll be probably one of those that isn't listed on the books, but man, isn't he the actual puppet master? And we can theorize about all this stuff. It makes sense. An object in motion tends to stay in motion. The trajectory this government has been on for at least 30 years now is to grow in size, squash your rights, your privacy, your voice, your opinion. And you're just seeing it continually confirm that this is the direction it's headed in, by even Kamala could possibly be a candidate, or even that in an America, supposedly a nation of laws, which keeps it from being Russia, right, can just switch gears from Biden to Kamala without any opinion put forward by the voters in primaries. That's okay. It's just okay. And he doesn't have to go 25th Amendment. That's not legal by the laws that were on the books before any of these situations arose. So if your government isn't willing to pay attention to the rules and regs, you got to understand that's a government that's out of control, and it ends in one place, because eventually Mother Nature says, you're done. Mother Nature says your dollar's worth 0, you're done. It's over. And your government shrinks and things implode, and we go through some hellacious, ugly, painful, agonizing, very difficult times, like all the reserve currency countries before us went through, but we get our country back.
Yeah.
Eventually. You're in gold and silver until the minute you wake up in the morning going, hot damn, I'm letting it go. I'm so excited about the opportunities in America again. I'm getting out of my gold and silver. It did its job. Maybe it's 6 years. Maybe it's 7. Maybe it's 17. but you have preserved your savings. I'm not on this camera to help people or talk people into anything. I'm saying I'm here to help illuminate the realities of the situation. We look at these crazy headlines and we get all pissed off and sickened inside. What are we going to do about it? The one thing we can do is preserve our autonomy by preserving and making sure our money stays ours as this thing heads toward an object in motion tends to stay in motion as it heads towards that eventual hard stop. Just picture the government as an overcrowded deer population. Once they eat all the underbrush and there's nothing left to eat, they're done. The resource they're counting on to continue with their power and their crazy decisions is printing the money. The dollar's worth 3 cents, worth 2 cents, worth a penny, worth zero. When that hits, they don't have the resource to be in power anymore.
Yeah.
It's that simple. It's math.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to make it a little bit exciting for folks.
Yeah, no, it's trust me, there's a reason that I like telling people about Colonial Metals Group. I believe in protecting my family. I believe in protecting my wealth. And, you know, I still believe in America, but I need a portion of my money outside of the government, especially a government that trashes the dollar. I mean, Donald Trump
trashes its people, trashes our rights, trashes the traditions, the logic.
Yeah. Donald Trump said in an interview the other day, he said, you know, the thing that scares me the most, and I've not heard him say that, right? Like he talks about all these things that Democrats have done, but he said, the thing that scares me the most under Kamala Harris, besides World War III, is that she will destroy the US dollar. And he said, if the dollar collapses, or that everything in America unravels. And he said, we need somebody that is going to keep the dollar strong. And I know he's up against a lot of forces, but when I think about what Biden and Harris have done in 3.5 years and how expensive life has become, I just can't imagine another 4 years of her and her policy. What are your thoughts on Trump saying his biggest worry next to World War III is Kamala Harris destroying the US dollar?
It's already, I mean, it's already happening. It's already done. It's already baked in. The government isn't going to change what it does. It's not going to suddenly come to the podium and say, we've done a horrific job. We're not going to destroy the dollar. We're going to quit our jobs. We're turning it all over to the governors. You have 50 presidents who are going to figure this out. We're going to decentralize power. Uber decentralized power to the taxi industry. You now had all these different options. So a lot of what's been happening lately in the last few 10, 20 years has been a decentralization of things to having things open and accessible. The framers were always against centralizing power. They know where that leads. It leads to monarchies. We essentially kind of live in a monarchy. We have some royal families. For a while, maybe it was the Kennedys. It's definitely the Obamas and the Clintons. And there's some other, wealthy behind the curtain kind of folks, right, that have always been there, keeping their legacies powerful but quiet. And you just think about when it's centralized, what's it going to do for the people? Decentralizing the power and having 50 governors more powerful than a federal government was the way to go. And that was going to stay in place in perpetuity as long as the government couldn't get its hands on a resource called the American dollar. And it's not about printing money. They issue it onto an Excel spreadsheet and it's there. You can't even detect it. And they have so many little games where they create a financial vehicle, they put it out there, they buy the financial vehicle, then they hold it, and money goes out into the system. It's causing Americans to suffer and struggle mightily as their paychecks can't keep up with the cost of living. So that's why we never feel at peace. It's then natural to turn to the government saying, hey, help us out here. Because we don't understand why the struggle's happening. I'm trying to make this point. And here's the boring, goofy example that I have, if I could share it real quickly. The Social Security thing. Forget about the checks that go out. And they do help keep certain people from eating Alpo for dinner on a sidewalk. But look at the numbers. 44 workers to a retiree when Social Security was thought up. That's great. We don't have any problems with Social Security if we still have 44 workers to a retiree. So picture having a farm. Steve Gardner, you're a big farmer. You have 1 million acres to farm, right? You have 1 million employees. And in 1997, 400,000 of them decided to retire. Because they're 65, they're done. And you agreed that you would give them a paycheck even once they quit working. and a place to live. So now in the acreage that you have to carve out a couple 100,000 acres for them to have a little cottage, and you still have to pay them a couple grand a month. And now you have 600,000 workers and you have less acres. So your farm can't produce what it used to produce. And you've got this giant cost you never had before supporting 400,000 retirees. That's what happened in 1997. That's why debt went crazy from 4 trillion to 35, almost 36 trillion today. And the government's idea to afford all this was, well, we don't know what to do, but we can't go broke now. So just print the money. So they issue the money out of thin air into the economy. Cost of living starts going crazy. Stock market goes crazy. Real estate goes crazy. The cost of everything goes crazy. There's $90,000 pickup trucks today, but your earnings didn't. And that's why we're in the pain. And then you say, oh, well, is this going to go on forever? No, because eventually Mother Nature's laws of physics go, enough. You're out of the resource that you're using to support this charade that we're all good to go. GDP is a negative number since 2008 if you back out all the printed money. And banks print money too when they make loans. They can lend 10 times the amount of money they're sitting on. Clinton introduced that. To me, the last mark of an attempt by the government to contain some financial reality was when Gingrich and Clinton got together and said, we think to get welfare, you should have a job. Obama removed that. That's where we really started to slip. Interest rates were 0 for 8 years. They got up to 2.5% before COVID hit. They've been, at 0 for a while. Then inflation kicks in. They raise rates to 5.25%. Now they're cutting rates. Why? Aren't we normal? If you look back at normal times in our history, interest rates average being around 6%. Now we need to take them back down to, 2 or 3 or 0. It's a sign that it's coming to an end. You got to look at how serious this is. What JD Vance is talking about, I don't agree with. I don't think he's understanding. He hasn't looked into the ugly part of the bull to get a view of the stakes you're actually talking about. You wouldn't want to eat this meal. This is a disgusting creature. It's eroded. It's rotten. It's done. Yeah. It's done. You can't stop this process. The government has to print because the workers aren't, the economy isn't profitable from the boots on the ground. So you have to print the money. If cost for America is, 26 trillion for the year and the economy produces 20 trillion, you got to print 6 or everyone just is eating Alpo for dinner on a sidewalk. That's the situation we're in. That's actually the situation.
Yeah.
Looking at the numbers, not my crystal ball.
Yeah. No.
It's horrific.
Yeah, if the government had to behave the way the American family does, living within a budget, bringing
we'd be good
in,
to go.
yeah,
they'd still be our friends. They'd be our allies.
They don't. They just have a magic money printing machine, and then they make life expensive for everyone else who has to live within that budget. Paul, this has been a fascinating discussion. Let me give you guys a shout out. I appreciate you coming on and taking time today. If you're interested in learning about precious metals, gold, silver, I highly recommend Colonial Metals Group. You can call them at 800-807-2143, or you can go to colonialmetalsgroup.com/Gardner, or you can snap a photo of this QR code to get some information. Paul, I just want to say thank you so much. When other sponsors were dropping me because I was telling the truth, it hurt. And so to have Colonial Metals Group say, we want a truth teller, we want an educator, I just want to say thank you and reciprocate back to you guys. But thank you so much for coming on and sharing this. I know you do so much research every single day.
I care about Americans, man. I care to know, why is it so used to, it's a struggle for me. I mean, I've struggled. I just, it's just freaking evil, man, what they've been doing. And all these 300 million, I mean, 40% of this country doesn't earn enough money to have to pay taxes. And it's all due to the government intervening in how we live. They have ripped the fabric of our humanity to shreds. They sent our jobs overseas. The towns lost their pride when the factories closed, or they still stand there just rotting away because no one needs forced to even tear them down and put a park there. We just got tombstones of the greatness of America caused by Americans everywhere you look. I'm sick of it. I know we're going to be free again one day. Anything artificial can't last. The only place to really make money in the artificial world is Hollywood. No one wants to move there, right? No one wants to live in some Disney scripted movie. It's fake. My heart bleeds for Americans. So sorry to go on so long, but I'm pissed off. And you talk about the truth and it gets me lifted because it touches on, nerves inside of me. I give a damn. I care. I'm an American and I'm pissed off and I'm sick of this stuff. But people got to realize we aren't going to be able to change this, but we can change what we do. A lot of folks live inside a jail that they built, and the keys to that lock are always inside the bars. I encourage people to look inside themselves and find that power and find that American spirit again and wake it up and let it start kicking ass around town where you live so that you stay free regardless of this shitstorm that's going on around us.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. I love your passion. Thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for all you do as an American-based business. I'm so grateful that you would spend time with me this morning. Paul, thank you again. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thanks for having me. You too. You as well. God bless you and God bless America and God bless Trump in this election.
Oh, thank you so much.